Hello, and welcome to a quick tour of the migration sample assets. The migration sample assets are a working example of a Bifrost pack that changes between two versions, and then uses migration change sets to deal with the upgrade from one version to the other. This demo is focused mostly on advanced users who are already maintaining their own packs of compounds, and the hope is that they will be able to use this working example in order to implement migration into their own packs to allow their own users to update easily with changes. So to start with, where to actually find these. Inside of the installation, under Bifrost, SDK, and then migration, we have a directory that has docs, README, and samples, and these samples are right there. So if we look in a text editor here, we just close all of these up. We have the README, and then we have Migration Example Pack version 1.0 and Migration Example Pack version 2.0. And these are two versions of the same pack. Packs are also called libraries, by the way. So the two are synonymous in this context. So the library name is Migration Example Pack, and the version is 1.0. And the version matters here in migration because that's what we use to decide which change sets to apply and in what order. So the second one, Migration Example Pack 2.0, that has the same name, Migration Example Pack, and the version is 2.0. And if I go back to the first version, then we can see that it has JSON libs. So this is the JSON that has the types and the compounds of this pack. That's inside of this directory right here. And then version 2.0 also has the JSON libs, and those are right here, but it also has one more entry, which is change sets. And the change sets are the migration change sets that will show all of the changes. So let me just demonstrate what is inside of these. So to start with, in version 1.0, we have this types old JSON file, and the names don't really matter, so it's just called types old so that it's easier to keep track of. But inside of here, there are a couple of types. There is an enum called example enum old, and it has some enum values, red old, green old, and blue old. So they all have the word old in them, so we'll be able to easily see the changes. And then we have a struct as well. This is called example vector old. And instead of members like X, Y, and Z, it has sideways, upward, and backward. So some kind of silly names, but yeah. And then in types new, we have version 2.0 of this pack. We have example enum new, red, green, and blue. So not red old, but just red, green, and blue. Example vector new. So that name has changed. And then the member names are X, Y, and Z, not the sideways, upward, and backward from before. And then the last thing that we have is this migration example user. And the migration example user is a user compound that is using these packs. So this was built with 1.0, and we're going to want to load it with 2.0 and see the changes. So let me just start here. I'm going to install the user compound in my local compound directory, and then I'm going to put in version 1.0 of the pack, and then I'm going to start up Maya. And it's worth noting that in Bifrost 2.15, there was a change that allows the packs to be loaded from their config files when the configs are found. So this will not load as loose JSON. It'll load as a proper pack, which is necessary for migration and some other features of packs as well. You can also load this with the environment variables and so forth. Okay, I'm going to make a new scene here, and I'm going to load up my user compound. That's the one that's inside of this JSON file here, and that is using the assets that are provided by this pack here. So I'm going to create a copy of this. You'll see why in a second. And I'm going to make a backdrop and call this referenced copy. And then this one, I'm going to explode it and put it here and then call this local copy. And I'm going to hit the T key so that we can see the types of things. And basically, these are using the assets that we were just looking at. We didn't look at the compounds that were supplied, but we did look at the types. So here's the example vector old, and here are those silly names, the sideways, upward, and backward. Right here is an enum. This is a red old, so I'm going to switch it to a green old. And then here's the example enum old again on a value node, another copy of this compound. And there's also connections to the member ports on the value nodes and things like that. And we're just going to show how all of that will be migrated. And then inside of here, in the referenced copy, we have the same thing. This is exactly the same graph. It's just a referenced copy of it. And the point is to show that this referenced copy is going to be migrated as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as migration demo. I have an old version here, but I'll just overwrite that. And I'm going to also take a screenshot of this. That will allow us to see side by side what changes took effect. So I'm going to go ahead and close Maya here. And in my compounds directory here, I'm going to remove migration 1.0, and I'm going to put in migration example pack 2.0 and reopen Maya. Yeah, there it goes. So that's now loading. And when that loads, it's going to use the change sets to update both that compound, this user compound, as well as this file when I load it. And we can see the changes here if we look carefully. So where we had example vector old, we hit the T key, we have example vector new, and X, Y, and Z instead of sideways, upward, and backward. So all of those have been renamed. The connections have been fixed up to be to the newly renamed port. All of the names on the compound have changed as well. So these were float in old, enum in old, etc. Now it's all the new name. And then here's another enum. And if I go inside of this user compound, then we can see that it's the same thing. The graph is all updated. And all of that happened at load. So first it happened at load of this compound because it's still a reference copy when I open up Maya. And then when I opened up the scene, this was migrated here. So that was all automatic. And that's kind of what migration should be like for a user. They should just find that they are no longer a user of the old stuff and just are a user of the new stuff. Yeah. So one other detail that I haven't talked about yet, which is this auto port here. This says auto port added, and you can see that it's not in the old screenshot. So in the old screenshot, we didn't have this auto port at all. So let's go take a look at the change set and kind of see what happened there. So if I go into migration pack 2.0, we can go into the change set here, and we can see types. So the types say that we migrated this example enum old to example enum new. That's this value over here. Example vector old to example vector new. The members of the enum were all migrated. So red old became red, green old became green. Sideways on the vector became X, upward became Y. And then this compound here also changed its name. So example compound old became example compound new. And there's a copy of it right there. And if we look at the ports here, then all of the ports in and out all got renamed from this old value to this new value. And that's what rewired all of these connections here and let it know what the correspondence are. But lastly here, this auto port added, this has a legacy value on it. So the legacy value is an int. The value is 42. And if I go over here and I create a value node, then we can see that it's an int of value 42 as expected. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this and put this aside here. And then I'm going to put this as legacy value. But what's important here is that the legacy value is not the same thing as a default value. So example compound new, I'm going to create a new one here, and we can see that this is already different. It's orange, which corresponds to Boolean, and it is false. So this is the default value here. Yeah, let's put the word value there as well. Yeah, so we have a legacy value and a default value. So what's this for? It's for two things. First, if you have an auto port, that's a new auto port. Experienced compound authors will know that adding an auto port to your compound will sometimes break existing graphs if the value on it can't be resolved. And it looks kind of like this. So if I go clear value, then this is now an auto port with no value on it, which is sometimes a correct state. So it's hard to fix that automatically. But yeah, it's the case where if it's the case that it's a new auto port and you need a value on it, then a legacy value is a great way to go. Just basically, it means when you update from legacy, then add the value. The other usage of this is in order to have a different behavior between your legacy behavior and your default behavior. So, like, let's say that this was a compound that produced a like a point distribution or something. It was like scattering trees or something, and you change the behavior so that there's a new and nicer scattering distribution for your default value, but you also want your old files to stay the way that they are. You don't want those to be automatically changed to the new one. So what you can do is you can add a new port like this one here, and you can say, I want a default value that's the newest, latest, and greatest value, and I want a legacy value that is the value that will maintain the old behavior. So then you can go and upgrade everybody and have that difference of behaviors between the old compounds, which will still work the same way as before, and the new ones, which will get the new default values. Um, yeah, so that's about it for the samples here. Inside of docs, there's some more detailed documentation that kind of goes through all of the features and explains what they all do. Yeah, that'll explain some advanced concepts and how to bake migration into your files and yeah, how the versions work in more detail and everything like that. In any case, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you are able to apply migration to your own packs. Thank you very much.